If I was to say something like, Memoir 44, it's the best game in the world, that would clearly be a lie. However, what I can say that is probably not a lie is that Memoir 44 is the most popular board game, certainly amongst ourselves, at the Bunker Club. And I can say this with some authority. Exhibit A, our collection of Memoir 44. And this is but the tip of the iceberg, representing my humble contribution to what we've got, and has been enough for us to run our first tournament in Memoir 44 as well. But that being said, there are also a couple of other folks who come to the bunker who have collections close but no cigar in comparison to my own, and indeed a few more who have at the very least the base game. Now, before you might panic and run away thinking, I don't have room for all that, this is a work of madness, I can assure you. There is no requirement for a sensible, ordinary board game loving person to have this amount of stuff. OCD has its consequences, and this is one of those consequences. But the base game of Memoir 44 offers the average board gamer more than enough mileage and more than enough payback for its investment. And should one want to dabble a little bit further, 2 core games will take you into a whole other realm of the game. And if you've enjoyed that, well, you know, it can be a slippery slope. The one saving grace that I suppose we can throw you, if you're looking at this pile of stuff and thinking, really, do I need an art collection like this in my life? Is that sadly, with Days of Wonder, reprints are a rare, rare, rare treat. So aside from the fact that in recent times we have had a complete revision of the beloved flight plan, and as such, the new flight plan came out in a similar sized box to the core game. Works well with the base game, but obviously works well with all the old product too. Things like the equipment pack are now hen's teeth, and getting your hands on some of the smaller nation expansions has become problematic. There are obviously places that still have a few for sale at reasonable prices, but one does tend to see slightly inflated and unrealistic prices in other locations. That being said, none of these are utterly essential, but hence the reason for this series of videos, what we are going to work through. And rest assured, you will not be listening to my voice alone. After this brief introduction, there will be a sort of an overview of the base game of Memoir 44, what you get in it, and how the various elements within the game work, generally speaking. Then, over the next few videos, what we hope to do as a club is to pretty much visit each of the maps that are in the core rulebook and take you through a two-way play of those that you can just sit back and enjoy if that's your kind of thing, because some people seem to, or it'll maybe give you a little bit more of an insight into the depth of the game if you want to watch through all of those. If we have not lost the will to live by the time we end that series of videos, we will then possibly start to explore some of the expansion maps and expansion packs which exist for the game as well. Along the way, we will intersperse comments from some of the guys and gals that come along to the bunker with their thoughts on Memoir 44, why they enjoy it, and where appropriate, we will also interrupt, shall we say, with tips and guidelines as to how we think you can shortcut things that are maybe harder to get hold of, like the Mediterranean Theatre or the lurking somewhere at the front there, yeah, the Pacific Theatre pack and stuff like that too. We do not claim any superior knowledge, any huge level of expertise. I am relatively certain that we don't get every rule right every time. And since the videos will be contributed to by a mixture of guys and girls from the bunker as well, I dare say the odd mistake will slip in here or there. For that, we apologise wholeheartedly. If you are a pure blood Memoir 44 lover and see that we've got something wrong, do feel free to politely drop us a line, point out the mistake. We will try and rectify that where we can. if you're nasty about it, we'll just block you. Yeah, life's too short, we don't need that kind of negativity. As with all games, it's there for fun. So, sit back, or go make a brew, hit pause, I don't care, and enjoy, or don't. But if you don't, stop watching, just like go away and do something else. If you do enjoy though, click like, hit subscribe, or nip out of YouTube altogether, head over to the Facebook page and give the Weegamers and the Bunker Club a like. It's like hugging us, but you don't have to touch us. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more. So, the Memoir 44 base game. This is just to give you an overview of what is in the box and loosely how it works, okay? Given the nature of the amount of stuff that we have, all our boxes are now empty and they are just kept for sort of posterity's sake and show. Because there's so much stuff, we have it all kept in individual sort of storage boxes for ease of transport to events and things. But, base box, and when you would open this up, you'd be met with your rulebook and then your game board, and then 2 plastic trays that will contain an Axis force and an Allied force, often referred to as Americans and Germans. Down here there will be a little baggie with a selection of tokens, 8 dice, and then a deck of command cards, which are the core mechanic of the game. And then these 2 recesses will house a number of hexagonal double-sided terrain tiles. For base game purposes, it's ideal, and the fact that it has its own storage tray is just lovely. If we flip over to the back then, you get sort of a picture of a game set up to play. You see the game board here, one of the D-Day beachhead scenarios. You'll see the troops and tanks and some of the terrain elements displayed there as well. Card holders with some of the command cards, the command deck, and then example of some of the figures around it. Visually speaking, Memoir 44 is like playing with classic plastic toy soldiers. You would have got years ago, like Airfix in a box, or the green and brown ones or green and grey ones in a plastic bag in the supermarket sort of thing, with a set of rules that make them behave more sensibly, more like a board game. And you know what? That's not selling it down or selling it cheap. It is toy soldiers, and it is a mechanic that makes the toy soldiers work. These could as easily be represented by dice, by tokens, by counters, by anything else. At no stage really within the game is a tank really just a tank or a man representing one guy. Depending on the size of the scenario, they could represent platoons, battalions, detachments, squads, or indeed a handful of people. You'll see a contents list down here, and it rattles you through 1 double-sided hex board, which is your battle map, 144 Axis and Allied army pieces, which are made up of infantry, tanks and artillery, 36 obstacles, which will be sandbags, barbed wire and hedgehogs, 44 terrain tiles, which are the separate hexagonal tiles to set on top of the board as per scenario demands, 60 command cards making up the deck, 9 summary cards, which are little sort of reminder cards of core rules, 8 battle dice, they're bespoke dice for the game, we'll take a look at those too, 2 card holders, which are actually 3 segments of card holding trays. Think of the sort of little trays you used to get with like Scrabble for your tiles, and a 32-page rulebook and scenario booklet with a bonus team play Memoir 44 Overlord scenario, and we'll come back to more on that later on. As you can see, the time is set between 30 and 60 minutes, ages 8+, and players 2 to 8. 2 is the normal for standard board map, and if you go into something like Overlord, there's rules there for additional players. With regards to the age 8 up, I have to say I would tend to agree with that personally, having ran Memoir 44 for the school club for several years to the year 7s in a primary school environment, and by and large I've never encountered anyone who without a little bit of training hasn't been able to grasp this very, very quickly and go on to play matches themselves unsupervised, or indeed teach others to play. I guess like all things, there's a level of ability here and there, and there can be variances of people, but largely speaking I would tend to agree with that. We will jump to the command cards, okay, and this is a deck of command cards much used and much loved, and the command cards come in a few varieties, but generally speaking you'll have these green ones and you'll have these grey ones. Now the difference is subtle but important, and we'll take a few of these. The green ones, for example, will always have, well, they'll always all have a picture, but the green ones will normally show you the board from the player's perspective, so looking across it. It will have the board divided into its 3 sections, and it will highlight one or more sections and indicate with an orange arrow and circle how many units you're allowed to order and in which section of the map. It'll back that up in text form as well, with any additional rules being involved, though normally they're fairly straightforward. So this one is to command 1 unit, and the full text: when drawing a new command card, you'll draw 2, choose 1 and discard the other. In this case, all units, 1, and here's one that is 1 unit in each section of the board. Now bear in mind that this is to the player's orientation, so to the active player it will be the other way around. Okay, and as I say, there's a range of those. Some duplicate within the game, some don't. The grey cards tend to be more fancy rules, let's say fancy rules, but they tend to be more flexible as well. They will normally have much more text, and their name itself may convey not always the right area, but generally it will try and give you a rough approximation of what to expect. So for example, here we have the move out. Issue an order to 4 infantry units. Terrain movements and battle restrictions still apply. If you do not command any infantry units, then issue an order to 1 unit of your choice. Artillery bombardment, issue an order to all artillery units. Units may move up to 3 hexes or battle twice if you do not command any. But again, there will be a mixture of these, and they will generally have more specialised rules and a bigger impact than the standard command cards. So they're special tactics that can take place throughout the game. Counter-attack, air power is another example. Behind enemy lines is a nice little one too. You will have a hand of these cards dictated by the scenario. The hand may vary between both sides. It's not always a balanced number of cards. Sometimes certain scenarios will tell you to begin with less cards, and as the game progresses you get more. And these are used to represent a force's level of surprise that they've taken over the enemy, their position of strength, or their general state of being better equipped. So the command cards, as well as being your orders, the number of them that you have is also used to try and reflect the conditions prevalent on the battlefield at that particular time. The rules and scenario book might seem daunting at first, but it is actually a very well put together walkthrough of the entire game. You obviously get the blurb at the start to outline the sections. You get a breakdown of all the components, the hex tiles, the different types of tokens that the base game provides and what they're called, bridges, the elements within the game, and the types of the cards and the breakdown of the information in them, as well as the faces that occur on the dice and what those mean too.
Just for your information here, looking at the dice here, there's a grenade symbol, a star symbol, a tank symbol, an infantry symbol, and a flag. Normally speaking, a grenade was capable of killing one element of any unit, and is the only dice symbol that usually applies to taking out artillery. The star is generally considered to be a miss unless special rules by a card that's just been played dictate otherwise. The tank or armour symbol is required to take out any mobile armour units. The infantry symbol is required to take out an infantry unit. And the flag symbol will normally mean retreat, though certain terrain elements and conditions allow you to ignore the first retreat, like being behind sandbags or something like that there. The next page is an example setup, which is nice and in our opinion very clear. It walks you through in stages setting up a game, and again refers to each of the elements that you will come across and what they mean. In this case, the map that's being depicted is actually the Pegasus Bridge scenario, which is the first scenario you encounter in the book, and will be the first scenario that we'll be looking at on a playthrough video as well. It introduces you to the game by dealing only with infantry and a few of the most common terrain elements that are likely to crop up: trees, waterways, and town tiles. Explaining how the objective of the game works, playing a command card, how it works, how the units move, infantry movement, armour movement, artillery movement. And then it looks through the battle sequences and how those work, the ranges that the units have and the number of dice that they'll roll, and some yes-no situations that commonly occur as well. Looks at terrain reductions, because once you start adding terrain elements to the board, they impact things. Generally speaking, being inside a piece of terrain will offer the unit that has got there some level of protection, but you'll also quite often find that as well as being protected through being in a building or being in a forest, there's usually some sort of incumbence upon a unit where their effectiveness at fighting out can be affected by being in terrain as well. Now we're starting to move into some of the fancier rules. We've already, by this stage, will have covered the basic rules. This then walks you into things like taking ground, armour overrun, and drawing a new card. And then we start to look at things like special units. And this is where some of the badge tokens start to come into effect as well. What you will find very quickly in Memoir 44 is there's a base mechanic with regards to unit composition, unit movement, and unit shooting. And everything throughout the game, no matter you move on from the base game into more complicated scenarios and larger maps, you will generally find that everything is in a variation of the theme that an infantry unit can move 1 and then battle, or move 2 and not battle, and has a range of 3 dice in the first hex, 2 dice in the second hex, 1 dice in the third hex. Tank units, armour units, composition of 3. They are able to move up to 3 hexes and are able to battle to a range of 3 hexes with 3 dice. Armour units have a movement of 1 or battle, and their battle restrictions are not normally impeded by terrain features, and they battle with a range of dice going 3-3, 2-2, 1-1. Everything after that in the game is a variation on those themes, tweaked by a token or an information card or a card effect. And then it starts to walk you through the very thing that we're coming to anyway, which was outside of the base mechanic for movement and shooting, things are then impacted by terrain effects and what the terrain does to either inhibit your movement or inhibit the range and number of dice that you use for shooting. Hedgerows, hills, towns, rivers, oceans, beaches are the examples cited here, and as you move through more expansions of the game, you'll be exposed to more terrain types. But again, you'll swiftly start to realise that regardless of whether it's a snow-topped mountain or a frozen lake or a marsh or a swamp, the terrain effects are also all, generally speaking, variations on a theme. Bunkers, obstacles, removable obstacles such as wire, and then we're into the appendix for multiplayer games and additional scenarios. So by the time you reach page 16 of the core rulebook, you have everything you need to play the basic game. After that, you're into the scenarios. And the scenarios all follow a very similar layout as well. You get the advice for how to read the scenario and how to set it up, and then you'll have a map showing you the mission, what it's called, the date that the real battle took place, a historical overview of who was involved, key names, key features of the battle and who won or lost. Then you'll get a briefing for the Axis and Allied player, and this will dictate cards, who takes the first turn, anything weird and wonderful like that, conditions of victory, and any other special rules that apply. And as you play through the scenarios of the base rulebook, you are introducing new terrain elements, or you're introducing new units, or you're introducing both, or you're introducing more of them to command as well. So the rules and the scenario grow with your confidence of playing the game. Once we get up to the likes of here, you're seeing units that are marked with a 3, and this is units that are French resistance. In this case, they actually have less miniatures in the squad that you'll put on the table, but they have other special rules. So you're starting to get to use more of the special abilities, and then we're jumping into here, you'll start seeing specialist tank units that actually have 4 tanks in them instead of 3. So slightly harder to take out of the battle too. Every scenario, to be fair, is normally played both ways. You'll play a match, note your number of victory medals achieved, reset it, swap sides, and play through again, and it's your total number of victory medals from the 2 playthroughs that determine the victor and the loser. And here we are with the Overlord. And the Overlord, as you can probably see there, is 2 base game maps put side by side. And what happens here, and this is where they're talking about the multiple player kind of game, though it is possible to play it with 2 players as well, just take a little bit longer. But in this case here, what you have is, instead of your left, right and centre flank, you now have 1, 2 and 3 made up of the 2 boards coming together and amalgamating them. And then there's Overlord card decks available too, where it'll actually dictate sections within a flank that gives it even more refinement to the game. And there we go. That's the rulebook. The board then is a hefty, heavy duty board. This one is one of the oldest ones I have, and as you can see, it is still in fairly good condition, despite seeing numerous plays. The boards are all double-sided, and you've got a side for the Axis and a side for the Ally. This is the green, and on this side we have the beachhead. It's worth note that additional maps were produced both in paper and in card. There is a desert and winter board available and can still be tracked down, and there were larger boards designed for both Overlord and Breakthrough styles of play. But we don't need to worry about those at the moment. Suffice to say, they're different formats of the game. The maps do exist, but if we're talking about base game play, you don't need to worry about those. These are little card holders that we're talking about, and as we said, you'll get 3 for each side, green for the Allied player and grey for the Axis player, on which to base your command cards for your consideration during the match. There have, over the evolution of the game, been little improvements here and there, and sometimes you'll get variations in some of the components. The older games will have wooden dice. In fact, I think the oldest versions, they're not even white, they're a wooden colour, and more modern reprints have plastic dice. But we tend to find they both roll the same. Objectives and victory medals are normally recorded by these kinds of little tokens here, and these are just little double-sided metal tokens that will be placed on the board at various points to mark objectives and stuck down on your metal track to keep count of your score throughout the game. The terrain tiles. Now, you will have to bear with us because, as we have said, we have amalgamated all of our components out of the game into various storage boxes. So we'll try and stick with some of the basics. They are all double-sided. The likes of a forest tile, a hedgerow, a river, a town hex, and there'll be a few variations even of that, towns and villages. There's a straight bit of river too, a mountain, and that's what has come to hand in that first batch. We'll not go hunting for too much else. The miniatures themselves are, as we have said, pretty much plastic soldiers. They are toy soldiers and toy tanks. There's nothing particularly fancy about them. They are all the exact same within their factions. So all the Allied tanks are the same, all the Allied troops are the same, and obviously these are little Shermans, and these essentially look like American GIs. Artillery pieces. Barbed wire and sandbags. The Axis tanks. Axis infantry with their MP40s. The artillery is just grey, but the same as the green ones. And the sandbags and barbed wire are also the same, but this time styled in grey. And that represents an example of the components from that point of view. Standard infantry unit of 4, standard armour unit of 3, standard artillery unit of 2. A hex that is protected by sandbags, or a hex that has barbed wire in it will be like that. And just as we said earlier on, when we were looking at the rule book, that is considered a tank unit, and a tank unit in a normal game will have a movement of 3, 1, 2, 3, and it will have a range in shooting of 1, 2, or 3, and it will have 3 dice, 3 dice, and 3 dice. However, terrain is the thing that reduces that. For example, this unit shooting at this unit from here would be 3 dice, 3 dice, down to 2 because it's -1 shooting up mountain, and that would be 2 hits on that unit and 2 casualties removed. Equally, this unit shooting down onto these tanks, infantry would be 3, 2, and that would be 2 misses. Nothing happens there. In situations with things like forests, An infantry unit moving into a forest must stop and may not battle that turn. However, the next turn they're able to battle out from the forest normally, or indeed they could move out and battle normally. Moving into a town is also a stop and may not battle. And you'll find that things like, if we had this situation here, the infantry would be battling out of this town on 3 dice, but the armour would be battling in on 1, because it's -2 for armour to shoot into a town. Because of the difficulty of urban terrain, an armour unit that occupied a town will reduce its battle dice shooting out by 1. An infantry unit shooting into trees will also find its battle dice reduced by 1. This infantry unit here shooting 3, 2. If there was a unit on the hill, it's at the 3rd space, it would normally be 1, but because they're shooting at a target up a hill, it's -1, so out of range effectively. Shooting at the infantry in the trees, 3, 2, 1, down to 0 because of the effect of -1 shooting into the trees. Whereas this unit, 3, 2, 1, battling out, this unit, 3, 3, 3, battling down on the infantry. An infantry unit behind sandbags benefits from a -1 reduction in dice as well. 3, 2, down to 1, a miss. But in the event that a flag was rolled, normally a flag forces a 1 space reduction. So for example, if a flag was rolled by this unit on these tanks would be forced to retreat 1 hex. If that same flag was applied to this unit, they could ignore it due to the sandbags. If for some reason the player controlling this infantry unit chose to move them away from the sandbags normally are considered to be lost and removed. They don't stay there for another unit to come in and take them. Artillery are one of the units that are the least flexible but most effective, because artillery raining down fire on a target is not normally affected by terrain reductions. So, for example, here again, an infantry unit and a couple of tank units occupying these hexes. This artillery firing at them would be on 3, 3 to shoot at the tank. They would be on 3, 3, 2 to shoot at the infantry, or 3, 3, 2, 2 to shoot on the tank on the hill. The range for artillery is normally 3, 3, 2, 2, 1, 1. So quite effective range and not inhibited by terrain. The likes of streams and rivers are generally considered to be impassable unless the terrain or restrictions in the scenario dictate otherwise, unless of course there's something like a bridge at play. You will normally find that bridges are placed very specifically within scenarios. In this example here, a unit may enter the bridge from here or from here, because the bridge has been set addressing these 2 hexes, and when it leaves it would be able to exit to here or to here. Up the edge of the board there are always these half hexes, and the half hexes are considered out of bounds. So a unit moving up the board, in this case towards the sand, would be moving at 1, 2, like so. And as we say with infantry, remember, it's move 1 and battle, or run 2 and don't battle. When it comes to special units, again the scenario will normally dictate to you what the special unit badge refers to, But quite often what it means is that the unit has a little bit of an advantage, and that advantage quite often is that a Special Forces unit can move 1 and battle, or indeed it can move 2 and still battle. Sometimes you might find them labelled as engineers, things like that there, in which case things like barbed wire. A unit moving into barbed wire must stop. It may sacrifice its turn of fighting to remove the barbed wire, or it can stay there and battle out at -1 dice, in which case the range would become 2 and 1. But you could have a situation where you have engineers or something like that there, and you may find that they're given a special role where they can move in and simply remove the barbed wire and still battle. It really just depends on the scenario and the special rules that are put in place. Now we've kept that fairly dry, I have to say, and fairly straightforward to try and make sure that it's quite clear what's going on. It probably doesn't sound very exciting at the moment, but we just wanted to get across to you quickly the contents of a base game, the fact that there are a great many scenarios in the base game, and that the mileage out of those scenarios first and foremost is because you play both ways on the map, and the fact that because of the variation of cards that come out, you will tend to find that the similarity in battles is quite slight. Though you may develop a particular style or a particular method of approach for certain battle maps over others, so you might find similarity in some of your games in that respect. But of course, a variety of opponents will also help with that too. Online, you can also avail of a great many scenarios that have been designed and put up by Days of Wonder, and indeed by the loyal fans of Memoir 44, many of which are older now of course, but designed to work with the base game, as well as a plethora of games that are designed to work with other scenarios and other expansions available in the range.